I don't want to be live.
Well, it's better than being dead.
Oh, Jesus. Yeah, record only is fine. So, Jeremy, thank you very much for being here. Look, firstly, I'm going to ask you, do you have, and please don't take this personally, though it is personal, do you have a learning difficulty?
Uh-oh. Maybe my spelling is not what it probably should be.
Other than that, do you have?
But it's never been diagnosed or anything. I don't know.
Because, and the reason why I say this is because I'm ADD. Okay.
Okay.
And strongly so. And it depends. If I'm not in focus, I'm all over the place. When I'm in focus, I'm 1,000,000,000% focused. Okay, that's my superpower. And the reason why I say this is because you've got, for me, the best rule books I've ever seen. If I went through life growing up and I had you teaching me how to do stuff, I'd be as much as a genius as you are, if not even more, because of my talent and my looks.
Holy smokes! I just
no, it's really, I don't know how. I've got so many questions, Jeremy. It's unbelievable.
Well, thank you for saying that. I appreciate that.
It really, really, really is unbelievable. When I first heard your name, I bought the Enemy Coast Ahead, the Dam Busters, okay? And was that your first GMT game? Okay, great. So I said, solo game, Dam Busters, who's this guy, Jeremy White? Let's give it a shot. And when I read the rule book, I was like, you gotta be kidding me, man. This guy he's telling me how, like, this is your finger, this is your nose, this is how you pick your nose. You know what I'm saying? It was that beautiful. And I thought, but this guy's beautiful, man. So, okay, my first question amongst many is, who did this programming? Who did the rule book? And how did this person or you come up with such teaching aid?
Well, it's all, I mean, I did all that. The GMT is great to work for because they will let you, if you want, and if they feel you have the graphic ability, to just let you do all the components. So I did all the rule book and all the art, and if you can call it that, for that game. And actually for all the games I've done for GMT. So, no, I mean, because I think I'm a little bit like you. I haven't been diagnosed as ADHD, but what you described as being all over the place, I can spend a day being all over the place and not really clicking on anything, and the anxiety level begins to ratchet up because I'm not getting stuff done. My list is growing, but then the fire lights and somewhere, and I am just zoomed in, and at that point, don't bother me. You know, I just don't want to be disturbed, and I can go hours plowing through whatever. You know, with rule books, we play complicated stuff. I mean, I don't know what's wrong with us, but to us, it's pleasurable somehow. But the thing is, I mean, how many times have you gotten that rule book and you're just like, you read the same sentence several times or a paragraph and you go, I know this makes sense to somebody, but if there was just right next to it a little image or just a little example, then I would be confident that I understand this grammar or this sentence or whatever it may be. So basically, when you get to my associate here, my muse, working for GMT, they let you do, you know, your own book, your own rule book. So I thought, okay, I'm going to try to write this the way that makes sense to me. And since it takes me, you know, I mean, I don't know anybody who does this for a living, so it's got to be a side gig. I'm not retired, so I have to put these projects down for a long time. And when I pick them back up, I'm just like you. I'm going like, how does this work? I mean, I have this little component over here and I got the map here. What am I supposed to do? I don't know. I don't remember. So I need to, so often I'm writing stuff for me so I don't have to redesign the game every time I pick it up.
Bloody hell. You are describing me exactly. And I can't proofread what I've done because in my mind, it's right. It's what I wanted to say, regardless of what's written on the paper. But I'll tell you something. GMT, yeah, everybody says they're great to work with. I'm not a designer, so I'm going to take their word for it. But when you came around, I'm going to tell you something, Jeremy. They shit their pants because you came around, and I'm sure they didn't tweak. Maybe I'll go out on a limb and say they didn't tweak squat in the rule book setting, the way it is, and even the wording. Did they?
No.
Yes. See.
It's Mark Simonich with Enemy Coast Ahead. He thought the layout. He did ask me a couple questions because he wasn't sure about the layout. In that layout on the page, you have 2 columns, but one is really long and the other is kind of small. And the small one is in the middle, is in the margin, and that's for that's where I put most of the illustrations and the examples or historical stuff. And actually, it's so you can, use. Well, this isn't the same thing, but basically, it's very ergonomic because when when I have a rule book, I always fold it back like this, and the bit at the margin kind of goes away. So I want this text.
Look at you.
So, but he thought the length of the line was too long. So he likes either 2 symmetrical columns or 3 columns, which is standard for wargaming. But, so he just asked about that. And I said, well, I prefer it this way. And I told him reasons why, and he said, fine. So that was the extent of the pushback, which is why it's nice working with these guys. Because on the one hand, it's Mark Simonich. I'm not going to say if Mark Simonich.
No, I understand.
I'm going to say, okay, I'm doing that because he's Mark Simonich. But when he says, okay, fine, and then it's like, okay, Mark Simonich said it was fine, so that's kind of cool.
I mean, Jeremy, give yourself a lot of credit because, look, when I read that rule book or whatever, and hold on a second, this phone rings and the phone will be off. When I read that rule book, saw the layout, and I was just like, who is this guy? Like, where was he all my life? Because I learned by looking and by hearing.
Me too. You better answer that. It could be your contractor.
Hello. Hi, Chantal. I'm having an interview with a genius rule writer called Jeremy White. Okay, Jeremy, my wife says Home Depot is delivering our shower Saturday morning.
Okay, good to know.
Okay, thanks. Bye. Sorry about that.
No worries.
So, I'm telling you, Jeremy. I don't think you understand the sigh of relief. Almost, and you know what? I get emotional about this because when I was young, learning was like, "What are you, stupid? What are you, stupid?" And it's like, I guess I'm stupid, this and this and that. But and then some, and then a teacher like you comes up because I consider you a teacher. When I saw that, it was visually exactly what I needed, worded exactly, and you stopped where I said, I understand now. Go on to the next thing. And it's like, Jesus Christ. I almost have tears in my eyes. I'm telling you, you freaked me out. That's why I said GMT must have flipped. I don't know if they understand the learning ability of the wargaming crowd. I guess it's more on the smart side, more logical people, people who have read a lot of manuals, a lot of military people. and
Oh yeah, there are. I mean, you've probably met as many as I have. There are some people that are a lot smarter than you and I, who can take a very austere rule book, and there's something beautiful about a tight rule book, excellent grammar, no extra word. But the problem is with those, they're great once I learn the game.
Yes.
The short rule book is awesome. When I know this game, I just have to look up one little thing.
I know.
Bang, that's awesome. But the thing is, getting to that point with that austere rule book, there I am on BGG. I'm asking my friends. This is where I got to be face to face with somebody and have them explain it to me, because otherwise I have no confidence I'm playing it the way that they expect me to play it.
I know.
So,
okay,
I mean, you can't, but the thing is, you can't satisfy everybody. You might like the rule book, but I know some people who don't like my rule books.
Well, I was going to ask you, did you get any negative feedback?
Yeah, definitely. A lot of folks don't like them. So, but that makes sense, because it takes all kinds, right? I mean, if it appeals to you, there's got to be somebody it's not going to appeal to, or it's not going to work for them. So, and I, that's fine. Of course, we have to accept that, that difference of approach, the difference of, and there are guys who are, they like the technical book. They just, give it to me straight. I don't need a whole bunch of examples. I don't need the images so much. And I don't want a 48-page rule book or more, which I can totally understand. Because that's a lot. Because the thing is, with complex games, you have a lot of examples in there, a lot of illustrations. If you have redundancy, and I like redundancy in rule books, because if you don't have that, then you are just flipping back and forth, and forth.
Now, with that said, the Kriegsmarine Atlantic Chase, I think you have a phone book in there in terms of how many different tomes. You got a tutorial, you got a scenario book, you got a tutorial number 2, you got tutorials for dummies, you have the rule book. Now,
tutorials for dummies? No, I must push back. There's no dummies. No dummies.
No, I understand.
But yeah, it's 250 pages, and that was a monster, and that just about killed me doing that.
Seriously, yeah?
Yeah, that was a bit much. And it was just supposed to be a 2-player game. There wasn't supposed to be any, I wasn't going to do scenarios, first of all. But I think Andy Lewis said, you're going to need scenarios. So, okay, I'll do some scenarios. But they were 2-player scenarios. And then Gene Billingsley says, this is going to do a lot better if it's solitaire. So, okay, all right. So then I go make some solitaire scenarios. And then I'm going, Mike Berticelli, he's a great guy. He's going, I think you need an extended example of play. And the thing is, I don't like extended examples of play. I mean, they're very useful, but I find them a little bit dull, because I don't just want to read the game. I want to play the game. So I said, okay, what if I made the extended example of play kind of like an interactive thing? So then you had the tutorial, and that allowed me to zoom in on, the early months of the war in 1939, which, not a lot of people know what was going on. It was, usually when you think of 1939 and the Western Front, you just think it's Poland, there was action. Everywhere else, it was quiet, it's not true.
No, you're right.
And you can see it if you look at the naval. You can't see it on the ground, but you can see it in the air, and you can see it on the water. So I thought, this is a chance to kind of show some of those, funky things that were going on in October, for instance, in November. And even before the war started, the two sides were starting to go at it, with Bremen and so on.
Well, I mean, I think the war started in 1914.
Yeah.
And I was going to ask you, no scenarios. You didn't think of scenarios for Atlantic Chase. How does that work?
Well, it was it was originally designed as a 2-player campaign. I got you. Basically, you just we give you 5 operations, and what I liked about that, and still like about that, is that you kind of jockey for each operation. You are, of course, trying to win that operation, but at a certain point, you might realize that, oh, I'm losing this particular operation. But before this thing ends, I want to get my assets in the right place for the next one. I find that to be really, because a lot of what the Kriegsmarine was trying to do with its surface assets in the early part of the war was just get them in the right place. You know, they wanted to get battle cruisers in French ports. Not an easy task because they had to get through the blockade. They wanted to get the Bismarck. So when the Bismarck went down, really its main task was just to get to France. Because if it had gotten to France, I mean, yeah, it would have been great to sink a few ships along the way, you know, hit some merchant convoys. But that wasn't the main goal. The main goal was to get it together with the two battle cruisers. And if the Bismarck and the two battle cruisers had been in French ports and sortied from there, I mean, the home fleet would have been in some serious trouble. I mean, they would have had to, I'm sure they would have weathered that storm, but they would have had to pull in more assets.
I keep thinking of the stellar rule books that you've done. Where did you learn to do stuff like that? To graphically do stuff like that? I mean, I've never seen anything like it except maybe ambulance books or resuscitation books on how to bring someone back to life, because they got to make it as simple for everybody to understand. Right. And that's it. I've never seen anything else.
Well, you know, actually, I try to learn from that kind of stuff because in my, I used to be an architect, and now my day job is I teach in college. So, and I teach a variety of things, but one of the things I teach is architectural drawing and visualization. And in the architecture profession, what you learn pretty quickly is how to communicate through diagrams, because architects don't like to write. You know, don't make an architect write too much. They have to anyway with email, you know, and specifications and contracts and stuff, but they like to draw, you know, and they like to communicate by drawing. And it's a language, you know, or at least language like. So I try to, you know, so I tap into that. And then when I teach students, they're just like us, you know, if you can learn visually, you know, that is so much more pleasurable, and usually it's faster and it's more solid. It sticks with you longer. At least for me, if I can see it visually, I mean, holy smokes, you know, it's so much better than having to read a paragraph if I could just look at one image.
I mean, that's why the Egyptians were so smart. Oh man. So okay, the dam busters. Not a big, huge topic. Doolittle raid, though important. Doolittle raid, not a big, huge topic. Atlantic chase, not a big, huge topic. So let's make a game about planes in the skies. No? Yes?
Sure.
No, but I mean, why did you do the storm above Britain and I'm sorry, I forget your other ones. I got them here. There, storm over the Reich, and what was the other one? You got three of them.
Skies above the Reich. Skies above the Reich.
Skies above the Reich.
Right.
Now, that's different than the stuff you are known to do. Yeah. Yeah.
That well, Skies above the Reich. Well, first of all, the Enemy Coast Ahead games were. There wasn't a game on Dam Busters. And I remember I was talking to my friend, Mark Osted, who I've known for a million years. And he's also a designer, and we frequently talk about game design and so on. And I remember I was walking my dog, and we email each other a lot. And he had just said, you know, how come nobody's done a game on the Dam Busters? Wouldn't that be a great game? And, you know, the light bulb. So Enemy Coast Ahead is kind of, the nooks and crannies of World War II,
right?
You know, the stuff that hasn't been gamed a lot or at all. Skies Above the Reich, that really was Mark and I. I remember sitting at his house, and he was talking about some game design of his, and he had mentioned Queen of the Skies, B-17 Queen of the Skies, which I had never played, but he loved it. You know, he even taught his kids. I mean, what a crazy dad. He's teaching that of all games. So he teaches that to, anyway. So he, because you haven't played that. So he pulls it out and explains it to me. And I'm just going, that seems really dull. I mean, I'm sorry to everybody who I know that has a strong following, and it is a strong narrative game. And I get it. I get it. So, and I'm not trying to ditz it.
I understand
if you play that game or like that game, you're an idiot. No, not at all. But when he was explaining it to me, I thought of two things. First of all, I thought, why would anybody want to play the boring part, which is where you're just getting attacked? There you are. You're supposed to be the crew of the B-17. You're getting pummeled. Where's the fun in that? All the dynamic part is the other guy, with the 190s coming at you. So I thought, why didn't they just turn this around? And then the second thing, and Mark brought this up, and he said, the one problem with B-17 is that although there are modifiers for whether you're in a formation or not, the B-17 was really one element, one part of a larger machine as it was designed to be, which was the formation. And they had the overlapping fields of fire, which the British had first developed. The Americans just copied it, and you had those 7 gun stations, those 50 caliber, and it was a death trap for the fighters. So those guys were flying in a very static formation. So to isolate on a single bomber just doesn't, to me, it just didn't make sense. And it didn't make sense to Mark. So for us, the light bulbs went off and we thought, why don't we just turn B-17 around, that game, and then include, zoom out so you have a combat box, and you give the German player that challenge of trying to crack it open. And that would be so interesting. And that was Skies Above the Reich. But Storm Above the Reich was just really the second half of that, because Skies Above the Reich gives you B-17s and 190s, and you can have some other aircraft kind of beef up your attack, but you're in charge of 190s. And then Storm Above the Reich was really just the second half of that. There was already too much in the box for Skies Above the Reich. There's no way we could bring in another board with B-24s or, more blocks with 190s. So we saw those from the beginning as two halves of a whole. But we also, we don't like the whole expansion thing where, and I know it's very lucrative, I think, for publishers.
Yeah.
Where you do the one base game, but they kind of take something, they hold some things back. And then they go, here's an expansion, and here's another expansion. Hey, and you just descend into that rabbit hole, and it's pretty cool, for the player, but but it's also frustrating for the player because you gotta, I don't know, it triggers that completionist thing, so we wanted Skies Above the Reich to be standalone, even though we knew it was only one half. And then the same thing with, you know how it is with GMT, that often their games go out of print and then they stay out of print for a long time. So we had no idea if Skies Above the Reich was going to go out of print, but we thought if it does, then we don't want the other half to be useless or to be an extension. We want that to be standalone too. So thus you got two big hefty projects. And that was going to be it, because by the time we were done with those two, Mark and I were totally exhausted because these games take so much effort. I don't know how some designers do it where they just pop them out, but man, we were just sick and tired of Skies and Storm Above the Reich.
I get you.
And, we were done, just absolutely done. And then comes a fan by the name of Gina Willis, who just loved Skies Above the Reich. And on BGG is going, what would be really cool? We could just take this system and port it into the Battle of Britain. And Mark and I are looking at each other and going, this person is crazy. This person is an idiot. There's no way it's going to work, because we had toyed with that idea from the very beginning. And we had ruled it out. We said, you can't go from the heavy bomber and the static formation to the medium bombers. They didn't have the same fields of fire. It was a completely different environment. So I very politely on BGG explained why it wouldn't work. And then Gina, of course, being the stubborn and very inventive person that she is, she, said, I think you're wrong. And then created a prototype. And then that prototype, she put it up as a vassal module. And then other people are going, oh, this is great. You know, and, you know, I got to tip my hat to her. You know, she did make it work. You know, she really did. There were some problems with it, I thought, because the thing is, Mark and I were sick of Skies Above the Reich, but Gina was new to it. So it was still shiny. So she did not want to give anything up. You know what I'm saying about, you know, when you get a toy, you like playing with the toy. So she loved the system. And we also, early on, we also loved that system, but we were just tired of it. So, but she keeps going with it. And then she contacts Gene Billingsley at GMT saying, I have this bird, you know, and, you know, she had a complete prototype. And then she goes to Hanford. She literally goes to Hanford with the prototype and she lays it out. And Gene then contacts me and says, this looks great. And I'm going, but it's flawed. It's not going to work. So then he sends me, she left it. She printed everything out and, you know, it was a working game. So then he sends it to us here in Goleta. And Mark and I sit down with it and we, you know, we go, okay, it is a game. It does work. But Mark was just absolutely, even more than I think, exhausted. So he didn't want to have anything to do with yet another project. So I said, dang, you know, I got to tip my hat to her. You know, this thing does work. And she also demonstrated with that prototype that she really understood the system. You know, she knew how she was able to look under the hood, so to speak. She knew it from the inside. But there were still flaws because the medium bombers were acting in her prototype, acting like medium bombers too much. There wasn't enough engagement between fighters and fighters. Because in Skies Above the Reich, we abstracted all that for simplicity. And also because the American fighters, the P-51s and so on, the P-38s, the Spitfires, would not chase the German fighters into the B-17 formations because it was too dangerous. They would wait for them to come out on the other side and then pounce on them. Or they would try to, you know, prevent them from getting in. And that, as a design, that allowed us to abstract the encounters between fighters and escort in Skies Above the Reich and Storm Above the Reich. But you can't do that with the Battle of Britain because the German medium bombers were not as lethal as the B-17s in that combat box.
That's right.
So the German escort, if they couldn't prevent the Spits and the Hurricanes from getting in, they would chase the RAF pilots right through the formation to try to chase them out. So if you're going to do the Battle of Britain, you have to include that. You can't do that using the Skies Above system. Now, Gina had tweaked it so that you could occasionally, you would get the odd 109 showing up amongst the bombers, but it was pretty rare. So, and the problem was that, Gina's problem was that she was being too faithful to Skies Above the Reich. But I was sick and tired of Skies Above the Reich. So after getting the prototype, she actually rekindled some interest for me in the Battle of Britain and in doing a game design on fighters and bombers and so on, which had kind of died a very sad death with Skies and Storm Above the Reich. So we started going back and forth by email, and I said, would you be open to us collaborating on this? Where basically I want to kind of take down a lot of the Skies Above the Reich stuff here and kind of rethink the Battle of Britain just with some of your ideas and some of the ideas from Skies Above the Reich. But, you know, when I design, I kind of like to, I mean, I learned design through architecture because when you go to architecture school, they have a process, very conceptual process for teaching design, and it ports very well into game design, especially historical game design. So, and what I like to do is, you know, you hit the books, you try to study everything about the historical event, and then mechanisms begin to emerge. And that's how we did Skies Above the Reich. And that's how I did, you know, went about Enemy Coast Ahead and so on. But that meant, you know, shoving Skies Above the Reich, Storm Above the Reich, and what Gina's prototype had become, and just, you know, shoving them to the side. You know, I didn't even want to look at them. and to start from scratch. And that took a few months. And then I kind of reassembled a new game that bore little resemblance to Skies Above the Reich and what Gina had done. And really, if you saw it, you probably wouldn't really recognize it alongside what we ultimately produced. But it got us away from the Skies Above the Reich model.
Okay.
And to Gina's credit, she was not, she's not only a very imaginative and inventive designer, she's also very open-minded. And she was willing to entertain these new ideas. So then after that, it was a matter of synthesis and development. And we did it back and forth, going, and we created what I think, if you've played Skies Above the Reich a lot, and then you open up Skies Above Britain, a completely different game. There are some features that are same, like fate boxes and the way hits work, but everything else is pretty much different. So to her credit, she was a wonderful collaborator in that. She was willing to entertain completely new ideas and rejections of, previous ideas, both in Skies Above the Reich and her model.
The picture you painted of Gina Willis to me is of a very confident, logical, and the last thing, open-minded person. I mean, she sounds perfect as a person, for God's sake.
Oh yeah, she's very creative and she's wonderful to work with. Because that's the thing, when you're working on these things, you're not doing it for money, because I don't know about other designers, but you don't get a whole lot of money. It's not like doing anything soon and renovate our bathroom, put in a new shower based on our thing. So you really got to enjoy the process, the whole process, and it's a long process. It took us so we have to not only enjoy the subject matter, enjoy the design process, but we have to enjoy each other, each other's company. We have to get along. And there are times when, she put her foot down, like she talked me out of including the Defiant. I don't know if you're familiar with the Defiant. It's a wonderful airplane. It was basically, think of a Hurricane, but with a turret behind the pilot, a rear-facing turret.
No, I've never seen it.
Okay, so, you got the pilot and he's zooming around, so it's a fighter, but then you've got your gunner behind you facing backward and he can hit
I'm thinking of a Dauntless. I'm thinking of a Dauntless.
Kind of, yeah, but it was a fighter. But because of the weight problem, they took away and the limitations on ammo, they took away the forward-facing guns. So it was a fighter that could not shoot anything in front of it. It had to get in front of a bomber, or preferably in front and just under it, and was very effective against medium bombers, as there were no enemy fighters around to escort the bombers. So it served in the Battle of France, and it was still online at the very start of the Battle of Britain. But the RAF figured out very quickly that the German fighter pilots understood how to deal with that fighter, and they took it offline. But it was so quirky, such a quirky fighter, that I got enamored by it. But Gina basically put her foot down and said no. So she could be very, that was one of many things where she basically said, we're not doing this. We're just not. But in most things, she, as a good collaborator, she was very good at bending. But she could also just save us from, because that's the thing about design, is often you get so excited about the subject, you want to put everything in. And you can't, because it'll be unplayable.
I know. Excuse me. I'm thinking when you're talking, I always do this. I think about music and how, first of all, collaborating with somebody is not always the best thing to do. But if you're stuck in your own little groove, you'll never get an outside look at how someone could see it differently than you and actually improve something that you couldn't think of, But collaborating with people, your enemy coast aheads are yours. Excuse me. Are there any plans for any other enemy coast aheads?
Yeah. As a matter of fact, there's this guy. I don't know if you can see it, but I'm working semi-feverishly on this. Basically, it's going to be, this is a scenario book. It's going to be a 2-for-1 special where, well, let me put it this way. The first enemy coast to head game was just airplanes, right? It was the Dam Buster raid. Then there was a Doolittle raid, which had a naval segment to it.
That's right.
This one is going to have boots on the ground.
Seriously.
Yeah, so we're going to go back to Europe. It's going to be 2 operations that happened just a few months apart, and they shared some of the same assets. So it's going to be the raid on Saint Nazaire in 1942, and this is the first time I'm doing enemy coast ahead when there was already a game on it, and a very good game. I don't know if you ever played the Avalon Hill raid on Saint Nazaire, but it's an excellent solitaire game.
I haven't played it. Yes.
Oh, it's an excellent game. Yeah. In fact, I am going to. I love how German fire teams get produced in that game. There's a very simple mechanism, and I see no reason to reinvent that wonderful mechanism. It's already sitting there, so I'm going to borrow that. So this allows me to then expand enemy coast ahead to that last segment of having action on the ground. And the other one is the Brunval raid, Operation Biting, which happened just a few months before in February, where the British basically dropped some troops near Le Havre because the RAF had identified a peculiar object sitting on the coast. It was this circular machine-like object, really quite large, probably as large as the room you're in right now, although flat, and it was facing the water towards Britain. And they were going, what the heck is that? So they had some aerial reconnaissance of it. They suspected that it has something to do with radar. So these guys were tasked with dropping at night and then racing to it and dismantling it and taking it apart, putting it onto hand carts, and then going down the cliff, which might be mined, because the French resistance, they were giving them some, they couldn't get too close to it because there was barbed wire, there were guards, and there were mines. There were signs about mines. And then they were going to get met by landing craft on the beach who would take them away. And there was a nearby chateau, which they thought was probably the operating station. So they They also wanted to kidnap, basically take prisoners of German technicians if they could find them, and also any documents.
It sounds ridiculous. It sounds ridiculous.
It's a ridiculous bit of an operation. And the leader of the operation was a fellow by the name of Frost, who became, as a historical figure, became very famous in my generation because, and maybe we're the same generation, the movie A Bridge Too Far.
Of course.
Yeah, he was the guy in Antwerp that basically, has to surrender to the Germans. I think he was played by Anthony Hopkins.
Okay.
So it's the same guy. So basically, there's some of the same air assets, and training was going on at the same time for both of them. So the two fit together very well. So in this game, you're going to be able to play either one separately, or you can combine them. So you plan for this.
You're actually doing that skit where you got to go get that radar, get some technical guy, go down the boat. Do you know how many things could go wrong?
Exactly.
Do you know how many things could go wrong? Holy cow! It's a ridiculous plan. Scrap it.
Yeah, and they pulled it off really well. They really did. They didn't leave anybody behind. Some guys got wounded. They weren't able to get the whole thing, but they got enough of it, and it turned out to be the Wurzburg radar. So it was actually a very important operation because they got documents, they got some prisoners, they got a lot of information from that. Jesus. So yeah, it was pretty. You got to tip your hat to the planners and those who actually had to land, and also to the Navy that was able to extract them. So much could have gone wrong.
The German would never think of a defense against a plan like that because they can't think of a plan like that. It's so ludicrous. It's ludicrous.
Actually, no, the Germans were concerned about airdrops, just not that big, because you know, what is really fascinating to me about the Channel, you know, that water body between France and Britain after the fall of France, was that it was like, I like to compare it to the no man's land in World War One. You know, no man's land was, you had those occasional and very awful pushes where you'd have hundreds of thousands of men being pushed across it to their doom for the most part after artillery barrage. And that didn't happen all that often. Mostly what was going on were these operations at night by very small units. Both sides would do this, but especially the British were very aggressive. So what the British seem to have done in World War II is they took that same mentality of these night raids. And the night raids were so crucial because that's where they got information, but they also kept the enemy off guard. And they did the same thing in World War II by dropping guys or sending in small craft spies, you know, espionage. They were in contact, very sporadic contact with the resistance. And the Germans understood this, but it was very active. So they were guarding against that sort of thing. So which made the Broomval raid even more risky because of it. It's because it's not like the Germans didn't know about these things.
Now, in between the channels, there's two islands. There's Jersey and Guernsey. Are you going to do anything on those islands? I'm sorry?
It's great that they rhyme. It's much easier to remember them.
Yeah, it's very Tolkien.
Yes, it's very kind of them to do that for us. For those who can't remember place names.
Is there anything that interests you on those islands that could be gamified?
Yeah, I think what not necessarily as a war. I mean, it would be a war game, but not really a military game. I think what's really interesting about those islands is, and I don't know, the thing is, I don't know enough about them, but as I recall, at least one of them had, it was
Nazi occupied. It was Nazi occupied.
Yes, that's where it gets really interesting because it was so isolated on the one hand, it was out of the way on the other hand. It wasn't a major military. There wasn't a whole lot of military action going on there. It was kind of quiet, but yet it was a very uneasy occupation between British citizens dealing with Nazis. So that, I think that is because of the self-contained nature of an island. I think that could be a very interesting Euro-ish kind of game, or I don't know, not necessarily a military game. I think that could be really quite fascinating at how do you deal with that situation? What kind, and also think of the economy.
Yeah.
You know, the economy gets cut off from Britain.
From Britain.
Largely gets cut off from France, as I understand it. There's really two economies. There's the military, the Wehrmacht part of the economy, where they're getting flows and so on. But there certainly isn't a kind of free trade between France and those islands now in the way that it was prior to the war. So that could be really fascinating.
I mean, the Germans had to feed the people on the island. They had to get the stuff because Britain, they were cut off.
Yes. So, you know, on the one hand, they have to collaborate, you know, as people who are in an occupied situation always have to do, but yet the borders are so solid because it's an island. It's not as permeable as it is in France, because the French borders were pretty darn permeable, no matter how hard the Germans tried to, you know, prevent flow going between Spain and Switzerland. For instance, in the Saint Nazaire raid, some of the survivors, the Brits, they made their way all the way to Spain. They were able to do that thanks to the French resistance. And that, of course, was a contingency plan that if everything goes south and you can't be picked up by the motorboats, you're going to have to make your way deep into France and try to get to Spain.
I can't think of a movie that was done on the operation of Saint Nazaire. Was there one?
Boy, I think so. Yeah. In fact, I think there was one. One may have been done either during the war or really close to it. It was more of an abstract. You didn't know it was necessarily Saint Nazaire. It was just kind of. But it's got something like the Campbelltown which was that World War I American destroyer that the Brits had got and jammed into the caisson of the dock, the Normandy dock. I can't remember the name of it now. And now, of course, you've made me want to go see it. Thank you very much.
Well, I mean, yeah. And there's.
But that's the way I am. You know, a chicken goes by and you go, "Ooh, a chicken."
Yeah,
follow
it's
that
a red
chicken.
squirrel, man. That's what I am. I keep thinking of the Guns of Navarone for another thing. And you said Euros before, Jeremy. First of all, do you have time to play games?
Yeah. Of course, just not much.
And do you play games, Euro games?
I do. Mark Osted and I are the one. He really likes Euro games. He works a lot, so he doesn't have a lot of time, and he lives nearby, so he's kind of my gaming group. And besides, with all my designs, he's great to have around because you need somebody to keep you in check. You know.
Yes.
So here's a dumb idea, and he goes, "Yep, pretty dumb idea."
Yeah.
No, but he also works. He works a lot of hours. He also works at night, so he gravitates to the simpler games. And of course, if you're a war gamer, then a Euro is a kind of simple game, right?
Yeah.
You know, so we do a lot of that, which is great because there's a lot of ideas for as a designer. It's a very fertile field. You know, I love playing the Euros because you can complete it, but also you get new ideas. And also a lot of Euro rule books are pretty good. They know how to teach a game.
Yeah, and they
not as much as I can, but
and you being a game design artist, accepting criticism, have you come to the point where it's not personal anymore?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. No. In fact, I prefer the criticism to the praise.
Yeah.
Praise just embarrasses me greatly.
I know. Yeah.
You know, and I have a hard time responding to it both online and in person. Quite frankly,
it seems there's no growth in praise, but growth in criticism.
Yes. Yeah. Now, of course, it depends on the criticism because a lot of the time, just because somebody doesn't like something, you know, everybody has their opinion. They're entitled to it. And not everybody is going to like the rule books that you and I like. And that I don't have a problem with that, but I like to hear that.
Yeah, but that's not the criticism that would affect me. It's the process. Like, is this rule good? Like you said, Mark Asted would say, no, it's not a good idea. And you'd say, is it a dumb idea? Yeah, it's a dumb idea. So that's what I'm talking about. Once the rule book is out, it's out.
Yeah, that's true. But you can still learn from it, you know.
Yeah.
And that's important. You know, it's important to get the critique. It's important to get the pushback and to see people struggle with it. You know, so the questions are also really good. It takes time, though, which is kind of a pain, quite frankly. Somebody asks a question on BGG, especially the question where I think I understand this, but I just want to make sure. And you read it and you go, yeah, you pretty much got it, you know, but it is courteous to reply. You know, and also to give them some confidence because we've all been there. We think we have the rule, but do we really have the rule? You know, so it's good to hear that from the designer that, yep, you seem to have the rule.
Now, sorry, I didn't want to cut you off.
You didn't.
Okay. Now you come around. You've stirred the pot for sure, 100%. Are you confident with your rule books now? Does it matter to you the criticism of, I like this rule book, I don't like this rule book? Will you keep going ahead the way you are going to go ahead? Making the rule book for you, that is.
Well, I really don't have a choice, you know, because I have to enjoy it. And I have to, you know, so yeah, I think if I were trying to make a living out of this, it would be different. I wouldn't be as eager to experiment.
Right.
I got nothing to lose. You know, what's the worst that's going to happen? It's not going to sell very well. It's like, you know, I don't know if my bank account would notice if it didn't sell very well, quite frankly. And I might get a lot of criticism, but I would learn from that. And, you know, but at the same time, I don't want to screw people over, though. You know,
How do you screw people over?
Well, because I don't know, I feel a responsibility to people. If you're going to go to the trouble of actually putting a game out there that people are going to pay for, I feel a responsibility that you have to make a workable package. They might not like the game. That's, you know, you can't help that, but you got to make it so that they can play it. You know, let them not like the game that you designed. Don't create a rule book or a set of components that they don't know what the heck this is, and therefore they don't, you know, you got to give them a chance.
Yeah, but you didn't do that. You actually created a work of art in rule books. Plus, you won the CSR. Hey, that's it. That's your answer. Enough said.
That was a little embarrassing. Yeah.
Well,
but I know you had a lot to do with organizing it, and thank you.
Who?
You.
Oh, thanks. I'm very bad at praise. It's just, it's something I like. I got a big mouth, and I'm persistent. You know what I mean? And I mean, that
is an amazing combination. Persistence plus a big mouth.
Yeah.
But I would also say you're a very creative individual.
Well, yeah, I'm an artist. Like you, I'm an artist. You know what I mean? And talking about stuff like that, are you a music guy?
I love music.
I don't like that. Right away, as soon as you said it that way, you freaked me out.
I never learned to play anything. And
no,
the thing,
listen.
My father. Yeah, I love. Yeah, definitely.
Like, what's your thing? Like, do you wake up in the morning and turn on a radio, or you brush your teeth first?
I brush my teeth first.
Yeah, I know.
That is for my co-inhabitants, for my wife, my cats, and when the kid was living with us, you know.
So what do you listen to, man?
Well, it depends. A lot of different things. When I'm designing, usually I like either jazz or classical, older stuff without words, unless it's words I don't understand, because I can't. If they're words, then I can't concentrate.
I gotcha.
I have to be into that music, and that's all I can do.
Yeah.
You know, so if I'm lighting, say, if I'm cooking, then I can listen to music with words and stuff, and I enjoy that, but not when I'm designing. But I like rhythm, melody, or sometimes dissonance. So maybe more, quote, modern classical sometimes can be perfect.
Yeah.
But something that just, you know, allows you to carry through, you know, it's like you're riding a wave, and the music can do that. And unfortunately, I kind of like it loud when I'm really going.
Well, yeah,
which
me too.
Is good when you've got, you know, you're cohabitating. So, and I don't like headphones. I like the space to be filled with music.
Yes.
So it's yeah. So, well, you have a spouse. You know that you have to share.
Oh, I'm a composer, and I'm into orchestration right now. She hates. Well, let me tell you, I must have written about, in my music life, probably about 1,000 pieces of music. Okay, because I'm hyperactive. I don't revisit. I fix it the best I can. Sounds great to me. Next, just next. And she likes one piece.
One piece?
One piece.
One piece at a time, or one piece?
No, one piece.
Okay.
And it's a piece that I wrote because I was stuck in a groove, a writer's block, and I didn't know what to do. So I said, screw this for now. Let me write another piece of music real quick and silly and dumb. And it must have taken me 5 minutes to write it. That's what she likes. So, and why were we talking about this? Yeah, like cohabitating. Yeah, no, she doesn't like my music. She doesn't like anything of my music. She is musical.
Yeah. So headphones, or how do you handle that?
No,
I mean, as a music guy.
No, I'm deaf. I blast the hell out of my speakers. And I'm into all genres of music. And no. Yeah, I understand what you're saying. See,
but I have a question for you. If you're a musician, if you're a composer, when you're in the groove, you know, when I'm in the groove, music is very important to keep the juices flowing, as it were, to help the creative process.
For you.
What does a musician do? I mean, if I resort to music, what do you have? What do you light a scented candle or what? What do you got?
No, the thing is if I'm composing, I'm not listening to anything. I've got a Rolodex of what sounds I want to put together, this and that. Other than that, I cannot listen to music if I do work, because that's what I did all my life. So as soon as you put a piece of music on, I know, like, okay, is he on the tonic? Check out the rhythm. Look at the basses. Oh, the guitar sounds really great. He's using compression, not too much gate, this and that. And we're talking about the first 3 seconds. Okay. So when I hear music, I'm working.
Yeah.
So no music.
That sounds horrible. Because for most, music is an escape. Music keeps you, you know, is a release from the work.
Absolutely. But I've learned. I've
learned you, but I also feel sorry for you that you don't have.
No, don't. Because when I get into it, when I listen, I hear things that you can't even imagine. That takes half a lifetime to learn. Like people knocking you in the head. Listen to the basses. What's a bass? And one day you figure it out. Oh Christ, you should have said the bass. Anyways, but no, when I listen to a piece of music, I am totally into it. It's like, I guess, what would that compare to you? Like when you're totally into something and you cannot do anything but that and not listen to anything. What would be your thing?
Well, that's the conundrum for me in trying to understand your point of view here about music, because when I'm really into something, the music, especially the music without English words, it can be so useful because it can carry you through design. It can intensify that experience that you're getting when you're, you know, in the weeds of music. It's that oomph. It's that I don't know.
You're not relegating 100% of your mind to the game. You've got some music happening there.
No, you are because you feel the music. You don't think the music. To me, it sounds like you're thinking the music. For me, it's like sometimes I'll want something with a very fast tempo because that is what's going to work right now for my process. But sometimes I want something that is a little bit more, you know, Thelonious Monk, something that is just, it's getting there, but then there's like, a little bit of jar, a little bit of stoppage.
I love him.
It's great, but not all the time. It depends on what you're feeling. And I don't have to think about it, but it gets me. It is totally separate from the brain for me because I don't know the music. Maybe this is a good thing I didn't learn the music. Now, I made sure my kid learned music. I had my kid, do the piano and then was interested in violin and so on and didn't carry on with it, but got really into music theory, which was kind of cool because I learned about, because that's very interesting, music theory. Very interesting. So
no, I mean, I've got
to understand it, but I love learning about it and kind of pretending that I understand it.
Well, no, you do understand it in your own way. You just don't understand it in the different colors that I can go into, that your daughter or son can go into, because playing the violin is right over here, man. When you hit a string, your whole body is vibrating. You're so in tune with that violin that is it your son or daughter?
It's actually a they. Non-binary.
Okay. I got it's okay. So your non-binary offspring, I don't know how else to say it, we'll hear a violin, we'll hear like a solo Bach, a chaconne from Bach played by, for God's sakes, Joshua Bell, and they'll know like what string they're on and what to do, how much pressure is being applied to get that emotion. It's something that you innately feel and get shivers from, but that person is just blown away at different levels. They get that shiver too, but they get an immense appreciation of the art that's involved, the skill that's involved. Look, I mean, I went to school. I've
Yes.
got a I've got a master's in music, so
Huh.
it's my life. It's what I am. Look at me moving. I'm like a bloody conductor. Man, funny.
You're a
And
very
it's
funny guy.
It's
You're
funny.
very funny. You're wonderful to talk with. You're very humorous. Yeah, I'm not even wearing hats. I should be wearing a hat. I forgot that we should be wearing a hat.
And it's funny, we got something in common. I have a transgender girl.
Oh, okay. Very cool.
So
musician.
She is not a musician. No, she is a klutz.
How did that happen? How did that?
My younger daughter.
Because I skipped my father was really into music. I have very fond memories of waking up Sunday morning to the sound of my father's piano. And that's why I really wanted my kid to make sure that they would know the piano. So maybe I don't know, maybe it's just skipping a generation for your kid.
No, there were no musicians in my family. Like,
wow.
Nobody.
So was it rebellion? I mean, how did you get into music so heavily?
It was the only thing that touched me. That's it. That it spoke to me right away. It's like sounds. It's like, whoa. And I see them as, if I were to be a conductor, I would actually ask the violins, give me a bit more brown, please. Give me a bit more brown, less greens. That's the way I see it.
Oh, that's very cool.
Well, there's a conductor called Nazare, who's from Montreal, who's right now with Philadelphia, who's 41-year-old, like what the hell is that? And who's one of the greatest conductors right now. I just wanted to say that.
Okay, go Quebecois.
Yeah, and have you ever traveled here with your friendly neighbors up north?
I have not. I'm hoping to go to a conference later this year in Montreal. I know some folks in Montreal.
Now you know me now.
Yeah, heck yeah. But I have a friend here in Goleta who is from Montreal.
So, I mean, do you enjoy beer?
Heck yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so
I mean, it's basically the main reason why when I go to the UK. I mean, honestly, besides the Imperial War Museum, I mean, it's the pubs. But yeah.
When you do come to Montreal, I'll give you my thingy.
Cool.
If you got time, I don't want to play any war games.
That's fine. That's fine.
I'll take you to.
They take too long anyway.
I'll take you to a local microbrewery, and you're just gonna be like, "This is nice," and you're not gonna want to play war games anymore. That's all. Well, Jeremy, I've taken up an hour of your life. I really enjoyed it. You seem like a nice guy. You know what I'm saying? A nice guy.
So do you. So do you.
Will you be going to any conventions?
WBA? I've never been to that one. Basically, I have a day job, so I have only so much time that I can, I usually have to work it as a conference or something else, but I have been able to go to Phoenix for ConSim, and I go to Hamford for their GMT West.
Okay.
Because it just happens to fit my schedule.
And it happens to be close.
I would love to go to more because they're just a blast. The only problem with going to those cons is that I'm kind of pushed and pulled by, on the one hand, you have all these people, thankfully, that would like to demo a game that, I might be designing. But the thing is, when I go to cons, I want to play other people's games.
I know.
I want to socialize and, I want to go out for a beer with people. Let's play a game and then let's go eat something. That's the fun part about the cons, and then getting to know folks, and shooting the
poop.
Yeah, the poop in between the games or maybe during the games. It's not so much about the games, but so.
You've heard of a band called Weather Report?
Yeah.
Okay. So when they auditioned the new drummer, Omar Hakim, when he was a little snot-nosed kid, Joe Zawinul, the keyboard player, the main guy, asked, "Hey, we need a new drummer," to Peter Erskine. I mean, Peter Erskine, whatever. And Peter Erskine says, "Yeah, there's this guy called Omar Hakim." Joe Zawinul calls Omar Hakim, flies him down, sits him on his couch, talk, have a few drinks, and Omar Hakim says, "Okay, man, like, are we gonna audition? Am I, And he says, "No, you're in the band." It's like, first of all, I got the word from a guy I trust, and now it's personality. Do we get along this night? You're in the band. And you know what? Why the hell am I saying this? I completely forgot.
I don't know either, but it's a great story.
Anyways, and we didn't talk about it.
Thank you very much. Now I'm going to have to go listen to Weather Report again.
Oh yeah, and listen to the Procession album. The first time Omar Hakim was there, first song, first side, because I'm thinking LP, and I swear to God, there's a new bassist and Omar Hakim, and he starts off writing on the cymbal. Ting, ting, ting,
okay.
Ting. It's so musical. It's just a stupid cymbal. God, what a musician. And we didn't talk about Infernal Machine, but you know what? I'd love to take this up another time because life goes on and the squirrels are all over the place.
The cats too.
Thanks a lot, man.
Thanks for inviting me. This is great.
Okay, so look, I'm just going to kill it and you can go when you want.
Okay.
Hey,
all right.
Again.